What is the greatest comeback in human history? Maybe Barcelona's 6-1 remontada against PSG? Levi Rosman's chess career? LeBron James's hairline? Well, what if I told you that it was none of these, and that the greatest comeback in human history was a chess game?
Okay, bishop h3, rook h3, queen d7, rook h5, queen f5, g6, I thought was a...
Remember this guy? Well, it's 1994, and Vishy Anand is a growing problem in the chess world. At only 24 years of age, Anand has already been fighting with chess juggernauts such as Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov for world number 1 for years. Similarly, another prodigy at the time, Ukraine's Vasily Ivanchuk, was already world number 4 at only 25 years old. He had recently shared first place in the Linares tournament in 1991 with Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov, as well as winning the Amsterdam chess tournament twice in 1990 and 1991, proving how skilled of a chess player he already was at this time. That's why, when they were paired against each other in the London Grand Prix in 1994, spectators were expecting a close, dull game, just like the majority of their previous encounters have been. However, they couldn't have been more wrong. As spectators across the globe tuned in to watch this critical game, Vishy Anand started the game off by moving his pawn to e4. Ivanchuk responded with c6, the Caro-Kann defense. They then both blitzed out their next few moves, playing a mainline Caro-Kann variation, with knight to c3, d5, d4, d captures on e4, knight captures back on e4, knight to e7, and bishop to c4. Ivanchuk developed his knight, but Anand started his attack with knight to g5, piling the pressure on the f7 square, to which Ivanchuk quickly stopped with e6. In this position, Anand decided to play the very tricky queen to e2, to which, if not properly defended, could cause some major problems for Black's king. For example, if Black were to play a passive move in this position, White's knight would have captured on f7, causing some major problems for the safety of Black's king. Even worse, if Black had decided to take back, it's simply mate in the next couple of moves, whichever way you like. Therefore, Ivanchuk played the correct move with knight to b6, attacking the bishop, to which Anand dropped back. Ivanchuk continued with h6, kicking the knight out and stopping all threats successfully so far. He then hit the center with c5, hoping for a breakthrough. Anand just developed his bishop to f4, but allowed Black's knight to jump to b5, attacking the bishop. Anand moved his bishop to e5, but Ivanchuk moved his queen to a5 with check. Anand blocked with knight to d2, but Ivanchuk continued his attack with b5. Here, Ivanchuk was threatening c4, which would have trapped White's bishop. So, Anand had to take on c5, to which Ivanchuk took back, while developing his bishop at the same time. After a few more moves were played, Ivanchuk came up with a really interesting move, changing the entire game. He moved his knight to c3. Ivanchuk did this because not only did he attack White's queen, but also added pressure to White's weak a-pawn. But what would happen if Anand just took the knight? Well, let's find out. So obviously Anand didn't go for this and instead went for queen to g4, getting his queen out of the way. Now we had knight taking a1 and bishop taking back. But Ivanchuk did not immediately take back. This was because if he did, Anand would take his h-pawn, threatening mate. And if Ivanchuk tried to stop it with g6, Anand would just sack his knight in exchange for a completely winning position for White. So, seeing this, Ivanchuk sacked his h-pawn, seemingly stopping Anand's main threat. Anand took the free pawn, but allowed Ivanchuk to finally take his bishop. Anand then proceeded with knight to b3. Ivanchuk decided to take the free pawn on f2, while also not allowing Anand's rook to g1. Anand did a rook lift to d3, preparing a deadly battery on the h-file. Ivanchuk allowed this with rook to c8, and Anand quickly moved his rook to h3, threatening mate. But now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where the fun begins. And as you probably already guessed, Ivanchuk
Sacrificed the Run!
White was then forced to take as its mate in 2 if he doesn't. Anand moved his king to d1, but Ivanchuk started a flurry of checks on White's king, starting with queen to b2 check. We then had king to e2 and then queen to e4 check, with White's king taking the free bishop on f2, as well as running for his life. And then Ivanchuk slides his rook down to c2, as Anand then moves his king to f1, preparing for the inevitable. In this position, Ivanchuk had 1 minute left on his clock with mate in 1 on the board if he captured on h1. But miraculously, Ivanchuk didn't see this. He almost ran out of time thinking in this position and frantically settled for queen to f4. Anand, who was astonished, blocked with knight f3. Ivanchuk then played king to f8, avoiding checkmate on h8, but still not realizing his critical blunder. Anand played g6, powering through, but with a few seconds left on his clock, Ivanchuk decided to try and relentlessly check Anand for the next couple of moves. However, Anand eventually blocks with knight to d4, losing his rook in the process. But he didn't care as Ivanchuk was about to flag, and that's exactly what happened after the next few moves.